Grüß, willkommen in einem Fragens video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 13 of my battle series of videos. This video will cover the Battle of Trebia, which was a battle fought between the Carthaginians and Romans on the 22nd or 23rd of December 218 BC, close to the town of Placentia. This video is mainly looking at this battle from a figure gaming point of view, which includes the order of battle, troop types and flow of the battle. If you wish a big picture of why the battle was fought, then this may not be the video for you, but if you want to know about the troop types, force mixes and what actually occurred on the battlefield, then continue to watch on. While there are reasonable sources by ancient standards on this battle, there is, as normal, a lot of gaps which can only be filled by guesswork. I'll select the version which seems the most reasonable and use that as my baseline, but we'll mention other sources or theories if applicable. I'll first cover the order of battle and troop types of the Roman army. Our main source comes from Polybius, with Livy being a source as well. The combined force which Septronius led into battle included 4 legions, or Roman legions. At full strength, these should have mustered 16,800 men, including 4,800 velites. At least one of the legions is known to have been significantly under strength. Polybius gives us a total of 16,000 Romans. Livy gives us 18,000 Romans. In addition, there are approximately 20,000 allied infantry, comprising 4 Latin allied legions and a strong force of Gauls. Mention is made of 6,000 light infantry, and it is unclear whether these are included in the 36,000 or 38,000 infantry, or they are in addition to these numbers. As normal, total numbers of veliti from 8 legions is 9,600, and it is known that many were lost at the Battle of the Ticinius. Most modern historians assume that there are 6,000 which are included within the total number of infantry given here. There are also 4,000 cavalry, a mixture of Romans, Latin allies, and Gauls. We do have some good material from Polybius concerning the structure of the Roman legion, so let's quickly go over them. Polybius indicates the legion consists of 4,200 men. The legion consists of 1,200 hastati, 1,200 principi, and 600 triari. Polybius does not mention this, but we could assume 1,200 velites, or whatever they called them at the period, which gives us a total of 4,200 men. The legion also had a cavalry force of 300. I'm uncertain if this is in addition to the 4,200 or had to be included or was included. The sources I'm using assumes that this was in addition or on top of the 4,200, so I'm going to assume the same. For comparison purposes, this shows the structure of a standard consular army. Using pure guesswork based on these minimal sources, we probably arrive at the following troop type compositions. It's possible that the Allied legions employed troops which fought in their traditional form, thus were not actually legionnaires. It's also possible there was a higher percentage of skirmishers. We know Gauls were involved, but the number provided here is pure guesswork. The book and board game Lost Battle shows the Roman army consisted of 8 veteran legionnaires, 6 average legionnaires, 1 average heavy infantry, 1 levy light infantry, and 3 average heavy cavalry. If the cavalry represents 4,000 cavalry, then each unit represents about 1,300 cavalry. The scale for the infantry is probably 2,600 men per average unit. The army list comes from the same source as Wiki, so I will probably use this particular army list. Let's now drill down a little bit more detail of the actual troop types using the DBMM Army List 2.1, and that will give us an idea of the troops that the Romans had available. This lists all the troops in the period, showing the core troops specifically. While the Romans may have had 1,200 Roman cavalry, which is 4 Roman legions multiplied by 300, they were considered as reasonable quality in the army list, good cavalry generally. The Romans may have had about 2,800 allied cavalry, with a quarter being reasonable quality and the remainder is considered as inferior according to the DBMM army list. It is unlikely the Romans had any light cavalry, although it's possible part of the allied cavalry may have consisted of Tarentine light cavalry. During this battle, the Romans probably, would not have possessed any Spanish cavalry. It's possible some Gaelic cavalry may have been involved. The bedrock of the Roman army were the legionnaires, or the hastati and principates to be specific. It's assumed most of the Italian allies were armed in the Roman manner. This troop type represents what the Romans later called, or our sources later called, velites. I'm uncertain why they're called levies in the army list. I suppose it's to differentiate them from the latter, better quality velites. Later, you can upgrade these troops to a higher quality of velites, but not during this period. So perhaps the Roman army went through some sort of change or transition period during the Punic Wars. The triarii were the spear-armed Romans, normally in the third line and consisting of the most experienced troops as well as the oldest troops. According to DBMM, the Romans would select high-quality allied troops to form special reserve formations, which is what this troop type represents. I'm not that familiar with it, and I'm not even certain if they actually ever existed in battle, but generally DBMM basically uses some kind of source somewhere, so it's probably likely. It's possible some skirmish archers were present, but I suspect in very low numbers. As with the archers, it's possible some slingers were present, but these would have been in very small numbers. As I mentioned before, it's almost very unlikely any Spanish or Illyrian troops were present in the Roman army, but this is what they look like if they were in the army. Specifically for the period this battle fell into, the army lists provide the following modifications, which are primarily the inclusion of Gaelic foot, which we know were present based on at least one source. Some scholars doubt this, but I will go with the common belief. This also modification, which occurred during the period the battle was fought, allows Allied infantry to adopt their traditional fighting style. It's very possible this early in the war some troops may have been formed up in this manner. Now it's time to cover the Carthaginian army. The Carthaginian army was varied, to say the least, but Hannibal had a corps of highly experienced veterans with a smaller number of Gaelic troops supporting him. If we look at my lost battle scenario sources, we can see the Carthaginian force mix. As these are better sources, as there are better sources which I'm going to be using in this video, I'm only showing this as an FYI. Hannibal had arrived in Italy with 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. At Trebia, this had grown to 29,000 infantry, that is 21,000 close order and 8,000 light infantry, and 11,000 cavalry. There would have been a combination of Africans, Iberians and Gauls. The proportions in each case are not known, other than that 8,000 of the close order infantry were Gauls. In addition, there were elephants, the survivors of the 34 which he had left Iberia with. This shows a possible Carthaginian army composition based on my personal gut feeling and the sources I have. It's possible the Libyans and Spanish may have been equipped with captured armour and equipment and may have not fought as in their traditional manner. However, more likely at this stage in the war, probably they retained their traditional fighting style. When we go to DBMM version 2.1 army list, let's try and look at what the troop types could have possibly been in the Carthaginian army. This list is small because the Carthaginian army... this list shows the core troops. Now, the list is small because the Carthaginian army of various battles were very dependent on what troops happened to be around, but these troops were generally always present. The Carthaginians probably had at least 450 Libyan-Phoenician cavalry, which were extremely high-quality cavalry, because that was the number that was present at Cannae. There may have been more at this battle because it occurred before, but I suspect no more than 500. The Carthaginians possessed 4,000 Numidian cavalry at Cannae, so they had at least this number at this battle, if not more. The Libyan spearmen were the highest quality troops within the Carthaginian army. At this point of the war, they would have been armed in their standard equipment. Later, they used captured Roman armour. One thing does puzzle me. It looks like Hannibal had more Libyan spearmen at Cannae than here. Perhaps he received reinforcements from somewhere, or perhaps the Libyans welcomed other people into their ranks. Interesting question. The Carthaginians had 6,000 javelin. Some may have been armed with bows or slings. I'm unaware the Carthaginians used bolt shooters in this battle. I would suspect not. This lists the special options for Carthage before 2001 BC, which does cover our 218 BC battle. The Carthaginians probably had about 2,000 Spanish cavalry, most of which were medium cavalry and of reasonable quality. We are not certain how many Spanish foot were present. But if it was 4,500 men, then this is less than those that were at Cannae. Once again, reinforcements may have occurred, or maybe they welcomed other people into their ranks, or there's some problems with our sources. I suspect any skirmishers were in the skirmish total, so this only includes the actual medium infantry. The Carthaginians had from between 1,000 and 2,000 Balearic slingers at Cannae. I suspect in 218 BC the total was probably closer to 2,000. There were probably up to 37 elephants present in the battle. Could have been a bit less. The Carthaginians, when not in Spain, had the following troops available before 201 BC, according to DBMM. This mainly represents the Gaelic troops. I'm estimating the Carthaginians had about 4,000 Gaelic cavalry, most of which were medium cavalry. I'm also estimating the Carthaginians had about 8,000 Gaelic close order infantry. I'm uncertain how many Ligurians specifically were in the Carthaginian army. It's possibly some of the Gaelic total includes these people. Finally, in the DBMM army lists, we get the following special options listed, which basically tells me that Hannibal is a very good general, which I think we all probably know by now. Just for interest, this shows an image of a modern battle memorial southwest of Pienza. This shows the deployment according to Wiki. If these scales are correct, the opposing armies covered a distance of 2,000 to 2,400 metres, in width anyway. The Romans chased the Numidian cavalry over the river and are met by Hannibal's army. Hannibal then springs an ambush, but the Romans manage to break through the centre. This shows the Carthaginian camp. However, the actual location is unknown. This is very much just an estimate. In the image, we can see the Carthaginians had 5,000 cavalry on each wing and severely outnumbered the Roman cavalry. In the centre, the Carthaginian infantry consisted of 20,000 heavy infantry and about 8,000 light infantry. The light infantry apparently fell back to the wings when the Romans attacked, or at least according to Wiki. This shows the possible location for Margot Barker's detachment, which sprung the ambush. This detachment consisted of 1,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry and was hidden in a gully. The river that you see through the centre of this screen is the Trebia River. Let's swing over to the Roman side. The Romans had only about 2,000 cavalry on each wing. The bulk of the Roman army consisted of infantry. The army consisted of 36,000 men, 16,000 Romans, 20,000 Latin allies, and Sinomian Gauls. Of this total, 30,000 were heavy infantry. This shows the possible location of the Roman camp, or specifically Sempronius's camp. Scipio's camp was further upstream, well, actually down the bottom of the screen. Now, this is a total guess, and several other maps I've shown or I've studied do not show the Roman camp in this particular location. Running along the top, we get the Po River. This river was impassable to any army during winter. The closest town to the battle was Placentia. This shows its possible location compared to where we think the battle occurred. This shows a more detailed map of the battle from an Italian source. It looks like it's based on a modern map of the area and does show a lot of differences to our previous map. This map comes from History Marché channel on YouTube and gives us a better view of the course of the battle. I strongly recommend people to search for this channel on YouTube, as it is excellent. Anyway, I'm going to be using this map for my run through the battle because it's fairly complete and does give me a good view of what we think the course of the battle was. Early in the morning, the Numidians harassed the Roman army in the bottom right, with the Romans quickly forming up for battle before breakfast and then advancing against the Numidians. The Numidians then retreat before the Romans. The Numidians retreat across the Trebia River and Hannibal forms up his army for battle. The Romans obviously follow up and cross the river, getting wet and getting rather cold. Both sides then form up for the battle, but the Romans are hungry, cold and wet, at least according to our pro-Roman sources anyway. This shows the possible troop numbers and deployment. It took the Romans several hours to deploy, so I assume the time is close to midday, as it's winter and the days are short. The Romans attack and both sides meet, with the Romans pushing forward against the centre and the Carthaginians pushing forward on each flank. Zooming out of the battles, the Carthaginians deployed a force of 1,000 cavalry and 1,000 light troops to the rear of the Romans, which you can see in the bottom centre of the screen, which now move out to attack the Roman rears. On the flanks, the Carthaginians are pursuing the retreating Roman cavalry, which they have defeated. The Carthaginians then strike the Roman rear with their cavalry and light infantry ambush force. However, before the Romans actually rout or break, the Roman centre breaks out of the trap, but, according to our sources, most of the Roman allied troops are killed or captured. The Roman legionaries then retreat back to Placentia somehow. While Hannibal did fail to destroy the Roman centre, Roman casualties were heavy nonetheless, so you can consider this a reasonably good victory for the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians did lose most of their elephants in the battle, or according to this source, which apparently was their main loss. If you want to game this, because of the ambush, this is a hard battle to recreate, unless you start with both armies facing each other. If you try to recreate the manoeuvring beforehand, you'll end up with a very different battle, but maybe a similar result. I have created a simple scenario for pre-stags, or P17CW, and also for DBMM, both of which use the DBMM troop types. As long as the armies face each other, and there are clear Roman victory conditions forcing them, or the Romans, to advance, you should get a good game out of this scenario. For those interested, this shows the DBMM army list of both the Romans and Carthaginians at 249 points on the Carthaginian side and 214 points on the Roman side. It's actually it's a fairly small battle, but quite a viable DBMM battle if you want to recreate it. And so this completes episode 13 of my military history videos covering the Battle of Trebia. Alle guten Dinge kommen zu einem Ende.